So this is my 2006 Toyota Tundra. It has 156,000 miles. I bought it 8 years ago for about $14,000, and it is a phenomenal truck. It is comfortable, it is reliable, and I've never had to second guess driving this thing in my years of owning it. And I dare say this is probably one of the best older vehicles if you're looking for a pickup truck that you can buy. These engines have been documented well over 500,000 miles. The one that I've personally seen was 400,000 miles, and it ran smooth as butter, didn't burn any oil, and I mean, just ran like a sewing machine, best way I can put it. In my years of owning it, I've only had to do simple maintenance like, you know, spark plugs, oil changes, the air filter, and I think, yeah, I did have to do the valve covers because they were seeping out the back. But looking at this engine bay, there's so much room to work in this thing. And a lot of these newer vehicles, I mean, they just shoehorn these engines into there, and it's a nightmare to work on. Now, this comes with the 4.7 V8. It's not a powerhouse. I think it makes 270 or 280 horsepower, but it does have a 5-speed automatic transmission, and it moves down the road and gets up to speed very well on the highway. Now, it is a timing belt driven engine, and I will say that if you get one of these, or if you have one, make sure you stay on top of your timing belts, because it is an interference engine. The belt pops and, well, your engine is pretty much done for. I did this job about 4 years ago at 144,000 miles. We're at 156. As you can see, I really don't drive it much. And the timing belt job is not terrible. I actually did a video just showing some of the tips on it, but timing belt, simple maintenance, and this thing will last. Now, of course, just like any other vehicle, I've had to do front and rear brakes. And the only other thing that actually gave me an issue was the drive shaft. The center bearing wore out, and I was getting a vibration, but I was able to pick up the bearing pretty cheap, swap that out, and this thing feels smooth again. Now, the interior of this truck is phenomenal. Seats are very cushioned, very roomy, and I don't know what it is, but Toyota just love their cup holders in this year, because you have two right up here, two right over here, two in the back, two for the rear passengers for their armrests. So, you know, if you like to drink a lot of drinks, this is the truck for you. The dash is solid. It doesn't have the sticky dash issue like the Camrys did. Climate control is very simple, which I like. My Chevy Silverado has that digital thing that tends to act up, but this is very simple. Plenty of storage in the middle, as you can see, but overall designed very well. The back seats, because this is the full cab, plenty of leg room. A couple of years ago, well, probably 6-7 years ago, when the little human was just born, I had to sit back here while the wife drove for a little bit, and had plenty of leg room, was very comfortable. And that's kind of hard to find in certain pickup trucks where the back seats are not comfortable, especially the older ones. But this, very well done. So in today's video, we're going to go over some maintenance items, oil, check over the filters and all that stuff. We're also going to go over some of the issues that you might run into if you have these vehicles, but even the issues that do show up is nothing that is crippling to this truck. So let's get it in the garage and let's get started. So underneath the truck, taking an inspection, and well, we got some leak action. Now, to the naked eye, it looks like maybe the oil pan, but I'm seeing a lot of wetness coming from the top. So it looks like the driver's valve cover is leaking. So that we will have to change. It looks like it's actually leaking pretty good. Now, coming over here, looks like the power steering hose, that power steering hose is leaking as well. All right, so valve cover and a power steering hose. I'll take it, not too bad. Outside of that, everything else seems to be dry and okay, so we're doing pretty good. Now, let's get this thing draining and let it drain for a little bit. That is a 14 millimeter. All right, so we'll let that drain for a bit, and let's go over and check the other things that you need to keep in mind if you're looking to buy one of these trucks or if you own one. All right, before we dive into the other stuff, just wanted to show, I don't know how well the camera picks this up with the lighting, but all down there, even to include down there. Yeah, our valve cover is leaking pretty good. It's actually traveling down the dipstick tube, got some on the AC compressor, and it's all over that lower subframe. So, yep, valve cover needs to be done. Like I said, it is pretty easy. I actually went ahead and changed it on the passenger side because I think it was 3 years ago, the passenger side was just puking oil out and the driver's side was fine, so I just left it. But now we need to go ahead and change that one. I think I still have the gasket kit, so we'll dive into that. And for our power steering, it is leaking out of this hose right over here. So I will have to order that and change that hose. But the fortunate thing is, easy repairs. So moving on to the next thing of concern with these trucks is the ball joints. The design of the lower ball joints is not the best. There's a lot of force on the lower ball joint, so they do tend to go bad. It's not a question of if, it's just a question of when, and considering that these are the originals, double check it. They might still be good, but you never know. I'm not feeling no play. All right, that's impressive considering this thing has 156,000 miles on the original ball joints. I'll do the same thing to the other side, lift it up and just check for play and movement. Now, if you are gonna change these ball joints, go with the original. From what I've read, the aftermarkets don't last as long. This one has already lasted 156,000 miles, probably last another 20, 30,000 miles, if not the life of this truck. But if you are gonna change the ball joints, go with the original. The aftermarkets, they don't have a good reputation. Unless you know of one that's decent, let me know in the comments, but go original, folks. So our next area of concern on any of these trucks, especially to include the Sequoia, the frame. These things had an issue with frame rot. There was a recall, and sometimes you might get lucky and find one that had the recall on it. But as you can see on this one, this frame is perfect. I mean, looks brand spanking new. Exhaust is a little crusty, but that's to be expected. But, you know, we're just gonna leave that alone and pretend we did not see that. But other than that, looks pretty good. Now, moving on to the drive shaft. If you're driving and you feel a vibration more towards the middle of the vehicle inside the cab or the back, this is your center bearing. This tends to wear out. On mine, it was pretty much sitting flat, maybe like a 1/16 of an inch or an 1/8 of an inch from this metal piece over here. Move it up and down. This one doesn't have any play. I replaced this thing like 6 years ago. It has been solid. So if you got a vibration coming inside the cab, definitely check this thing out. If it's moving a lot, broken, or just sitting flat on this, definitely need to get that fixed. Pretty easy. I think the part is like $60. So something to consider. So moving on to the next common issue on these trucks. There's these valves in the back. I think they're called air injection pumps or air injection valves. I'll post the exact name on the screen, and they give you a code. It's an emissions code, and I'll post that code on the screen. I can't think of it off the top of my head. And to get to them, you have to pretty much take the intake out, and they are very expensive. There's one on each side. I think they're like $200-300 each. Last time I checked, it might be cheaper, but when the check engine light goes on for that, if you live in an area that does emissions testing, you will fail. My advice, if you don't have to, don't mess with them. It doesn't affect drivability. It doesn't affect fuel mileage or anything like that. It's just more for, you know, emissions, compliance, and all that stuff. In my area in North Carolina, if a vehicle is older than 20 years, you don't have to worry about that. And then in some counties, they don't even do emissions testing. So in this case, I am getting the code for that. It's intermittent. Typically, the time when it's time for inspection, I turn the check engine light off, and well, it usually goes for about 60 to 100 miles before it comes back on, and by then the computer's already good to go. So if you don't have to change it, don't change it. If you do, intake comes off, you have to change both of them or one of them. But at that point, if one is bad, the other one's gonna go bad. I don't recommend messing with it. It doesn't affect drivability, but yeah, I'll post that information on there, but that is common with it. It's really no big deal, and honestly, I've seen these trucks go real cheap because of that issue, and I'd still pick it up in a heartbeat. Now, another common issue with this truck, and I don't know if it's like that in the Sequoia. Let me know in the comments, you Sequoia people. But you'll come over here and you'll find out that real quick that your passenger floorboard is getting wet, specifically when it rains or when you go through the car wash, and it gets wet pretty good. I did a separate video on how to fix it, but pretty much what's going on is underneath the cowl right over here, there's a little air vent, or whatchamacallit, a screen to prevent debris going in there. It has these clips which has these little gaskets on them. They fail, they're very cheap, and then when that happens, water gets in. Take it out on those clips, dab it with a bunch of silicone RTV, put it back in, you'll never leak. I had that issue. I did this probably 6 years ago, and it does not get wet inside. Another thing to look for, and another thing to negotiate, if you see your passenger floorboard is getting wet on a truck that you're looking at, you can say, hey, not sure what it is, negotiate the price and maybe get a better deal on it. But it's a really easy fix. What, $10 for the RTV and you have no more leaks. So those are the main issues that I found. Even though they're issues, they're not really, I mean, debilitating on the truck. Mostly the ball joints, really. Those you got to be careful with. But let's go ahead, let's finish up this oil change. There is a little gasket right over here that's stuck on there. You could get them real cheap. It's good to change them. I changed just the last oil change, and you know what? I'm just gonna leave it alone. Pop this thing back in and just snug it up. The torque spec, you know, use common sense. That's perfect. It should be good. Now I am going to go ahead and spray all that off, and we'll do the valve covers in just a little bit. All right, so now we got to do the filter, and this is the one thing that's really annoying about these trucks, I will say, is that you got to take this thing out. Now you can take the filter out from the top, but then the oil is just going to leak all over the place, and then when you drive, it can go over your driveway. But there's 4 bolts on this massive cover. They're 12s. I think you just loosen the back. 2 up in the front. So now that we're here, we can actually see that this is leaking, and it's not that the hose is bad, it's that these cheap clamps, they get loose over time. So hopefully this clamp is still good. You can see all the pink corrosion from the coolant, so we'll have to tighten that up. If you ever have to change a hose on these vehicles, get the original clamp so you don't have to deal with this nonsense. But it is what it is, I guess. That's my fault. I wish I would have known that when I did that job. Yep, it's nice and loose. So let's go ahead and tighten it. So if you're under here and you see a lot of oil just all caked up in all this, it's your valve cover. They leak. Nothing lasts forever. So before you panic and saying that you got a front seal, cam seals, oil pan gasket, and all that type of stuff, on these Toyotas, I've never seen them leak. Not saying that they can't or they won't, but all this oil is because of our valve cover, and something to consider if you're down here and you see a bunch of oil. All right, let's clean this up. For oil filter, original Toyota 90915YZZD. I've become lately a big firm believer, especially with these Toyotas, OEM. Qualities seem to be way better. They're not that much expensive, and when it comes to your oil and pretty much the blood of your vehicle, why take the chance? Now, another thing we need to take a look at is our brake pads. I don't know how well it comes off in the camera, but yeah, they're less than half. We probably got about a third left, so I will need to pop some new pads in here. And one of the things that people complain about with these Toyota trucks is how weak the brakes are. I find them to be okay, not terrible, but apparently there's an upgrade with the Lexus GX or something like that that you can put their bigger calipers and brake pads and rotors in there. These work, they get the job done, so it's not like I'm doing NASCAR with this truck. But yeah, we will need brake pads pretty soon. Before I go in and get rid of that light, we do need to top this off because it was leaking. Like I said, those worm clamps, I'm not a fan of them. And if you do have to change the hose, just make sure that you use the real original clamps or get the original hoses. Some of the aftermarket hoses, you can't use the original clamps that come with them because the diameter is smaller. But like I said, with Toyota, use the original stuff, they'll last. And honestly, looking back and thinking about it, when I changed those hoses, there was nothing wrong with them. I just figured preventative maintenance. But oh well, you live, you learn. All right, so now we gotta get rid of that pesky maintenance light. So switch it to ODO, hold it just like so, turn it off, turn it back on without starting it. You'll see it dash and flash just like so. And it kind of counts down, goes to all zeros. Maintenance light is gone. We're good to go, and that will actually come on every 5,000 miles, letting you know, hey, you need to do an oil change. So that's going to wrap this up for this 2006 Toyota Tundra, 156,000 miles. Still a baby, because these things they go well over 300,000 miles. And it is a great truck. Reliable, comfortable, never had an issue. If you're looking to get one, make sure you keep an eye out for the frames, because they do tend to rot in the northern environments pretty bad. This has been a southern truck, so the frame is solid. If you get one, make sure the timing belt has been done. If there's no record of it, go ahead and look to do that like real soon. Oil change, spark plugs, obviously the valve covers, you know, they leak, and that happens with any other vehicle. Air filter, real simple, couple of clips, check it. This one is still really good. I still got to do the power steering leak, which is this hose right over here, so I'll have to pick one up and that will take care of that leak. And if you have a vibration, check the center bearing. Those tend to go bad, but all in all, this truck still has tons more life left in it. It is a great truck. I love driving it. I do enjoy the newer ones, and maybe one day I will get a newer one, but even then I still will never get rid of this truck. So hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I'm gonna go fix something else.